Live.
Thank
It is now.
Good. It's live now. Hello.
So, welcome everyone
Hello.
to A Balance of Realism and Convenience. I am joined by the wonderful Jay, Craig, Mike, and Sean. Could we go around in that order and introduce yourselves to our lovely audience and tell us a little bit what you do, what your books are, stuff like that?
What we do? I write.
you know
I'm
what
an author, Brian.
Oh my God, I'm so
What do you
sorry.
write, Jay? What do you write?
Hi,
I
guys.
don't know what Sean writes. I've never seen Sean's books.
That's right. You haven't yet.
There you go.
Coming.
He's an author. That's what he does. That's what he do, Brian.
Well, I went with convenience rather than realism. So,
okay. Hi, guys. I'm Jay Boyce. I write the Touch of Power and Rise of the Mystic Mage series. One of them is a VR MMO, and one of them is a Portal Isekai reincarnation stuff. It's stuffs. So yeah, I have both the New World and the VR world. So that's my writing. Yeah. Was there more? Thank you.
nope, perfect.
Okay, good.
Craig.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Craig Hamilton. I co-write the System Apocalypse Relentless series with Tao Wong. So it's a little bit of the system has come into the real world, and now people have to deal with levels and classes and monsters spawning and killing off 60% of humanity the first day.
Sounds bleak, but entertaining. Mike, what about yourself?
Hey everyone, good evening. My name is Mike Norris. I am not yet a published author. My book Awoken actually publishes November 2nd, so we're coming up to the date. So it's a very exciting time. But I write mostly, it's a combination of high fantasy with cultivation. So right along Tao Wong's genres too, with a touch of post-apocalypse as well. The whole world crumbling and everything going to crap, but mostly cultivation based. So yeah, keep your eyes open for the book. It releases on November 2nd.
Amazing. Sean?
Yeah, so like Mike, my book's not out yet. It's still in the throes of almost getting there, but it's going to be called Lucky. About a girl who can only access her luck stat rather than everyone else in the world who can access everything else. So, but I think part of what the fun I get to have on this panel is I'm also a doctor of Oriental medicine. So I spend all day stabbing people until they feel better and doing acupuncture. And the fun of that is, it's that fun blend of, energetic and how real is real, and like medicine and how far do you go with medicine and realism versus magic and
Hand wave you.
Nice.
So I guess then with the topic of the panel, I suppose one of the key draws for lit RPG versus normal games media is that you are able to involve mechanics and things that would not really be able to be implemented in a video game. And sometimes those things can go to very, very strange heights or in different directions. So I'm curious of maybe your thoughts on, what sort of things have you implemented in your story that borders the edge of hand wavium into, where readers might be like, here, that's a bit too far. How do you sort of tread that balance, and what's something you've implemented in your stories that you think, touches that border? Start with Jay.
The first thing that came to mind was spatial inventories. Part of that is just because I'm a D&D player and I hate weight mechanics, with a burning passion. I just want to be able to have this stuff and carry and if I had a superpower, inventory would probably be it. If it wasn't healing, it would be inventory, because just the being able to pull out everything, it's such an overpowered thing that we take for granted in almost every video game ever. But it's an amazing thing. So I have these inventory rings or these spatial rings, that really should not work.
Mhm.
And like, and with them, so I'm able to do all of the fun stuff. And like, I have one that allows for capture of living creatures and things like that, which also really should maybe not work.
It works with Pokemon.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
it does. But like, and then in my VR one, I have her put spatial inventories in spatial inventories. So it's great. And it doesn't explode on her.
Moving would be so much easier. How do we get the fridge out? Stand
Oh
back
my gosh,
for a moment.
no, I considered that so many times.
Mhm.
Like, I would be like an expert mover or like delivery service. I want teleportation, healing, and inventory. And those are my 3 superpowers that would like, I'm set for life. Thank you.
Craig, what about yourself?
So I have a little more experience doing the technology angle of things. So things like hovering motorcycles, or motorcycles that turn into mecha, rail guns that run on mana, um, things like that. So it's the rule of cool, but like it has to fit the world. So there is the system technology aspect, and kind of Earth technology gets phased out a lot, unless people are using their skills to revitalize it and redo it using the system. So it's playing with those kind of effects, and not so much the magic. My main character is kind of a gunslinger, so he's more on the
The
tech side
magic is
of
built
things.
into the world, though.
Yeah.
The system is.
Yeah, I feel like with novels with more system-based architects, like technology can kind of the lines are a little bit more blurred. You have a little more leeway than like say, a medieval time, storyline where
That
magic
becomes
is just so
steampunk.
prevalent. Yeah, it's just I feel you have a lot more leeway like with your novels, Craig.
And what about your own, Mike? What sort of stuff have you kind of tread the line with Awoken?
Yeah, so for me, I think I actually went the other way. So, in the part of the novel, when Ki, which is the all-encompassing universe energy that grants people the ability to cultivate in the novel, it kind of renders all technology useless on the Earth, right? So, when it comes to realism, for me, I think inventories is a huge thing. Being able to like store a whole house in your inventory really doesn't seem realistic. But I've seen it done. It really depends on how you build your world and the I guess the world rules, right? But
You've
for
never
me,
seen my BG3 inventory.
yeah. For me, mostly, yeah, I'm really focusing on realism as much as I can into the book, and so I really think also besides inventory, I'm really looking at a scope the size of the world, right? Traveling. Sometimes you see in novels like people travel, 4,000 leagues and within like a day or something like that. And obviously, people have, characters in different novels have different developments and powers, and obviously some can fly and travel quick and stuff. But I'm really trying to focus on, that traveling aspect, what happens in between, and, keeping it real so that people can really, just be like, whoa, we just jumped, across continents in 2 seconds, without using a portal. We're on a ship. Well, what happened on the ship from point A to point B in the magical world? Were there not sea monsters, pirates, yeah, so just keeping it as cool as possible, and really, focusing on that traveling aspect in the world, I think is one of the key focuses for me.
And Sean, what about yourself?
So, I've always been a big believer in, magic is just science we don't understand yet, right? And so it's how do you apply that to, what you're writing is how specific do you want to get? How crunchy do you feel like being? And me, as someone who does not enjoy maths to a great extent, I don't want to get that crunchy. And so for me, it's about picking the things, but then picking and staying consistent, right? Where it's, in one book, the major plot point can be this person has an unhealing injury and his friends and family are banding together to, help heal his wounded arm. And in another one, they, drink a health potion or shoot some nanites in and voila, everything's all better. That took 2 seconds. And so I think either way is great, right? I love all of those stories, but it's just finding the one that's internally consistent, right? So if you can heal oh my gosh, half your torso's missing. Good thing I have a superior healing potion. As long as then when someone else later in the story has their torso half blown open, they can also cure it with a superior healing potion, and not, oh dang, that's too bad. I guess you're dead.
I ran out. That does actually, that brings up a really good point, in that depending on what level of technology and the realism you're using will provide a huge framework for your story, because people who can heal from being beaten and blown half to death are going to fight a lot harder than the people who know, like, if I break this bone, it's got, I'm like losing my arm forever. Or like if you have like with transportation, if you have the technology and you have a good transportation system, your technology is going to skyrocket a lot higher, because they can talk to each other and because they can like communicate and things like that. Like as soon as people can collaborate, and that means the bigger your world gets and the easier it is for your technology level to rise.
No,
yeah, and it changes the types of plot points you can have too, right? If travel is the big sticking point, like someone has to get from, like think of Brian's world, even with Quest Academy, you have to have armored train with magic and guns in order to get from point A to point B. Whereas someone else is like, portal, bloop.
Yeah, I love that about Brian's book, Brian. I love that travel part with the train. I mean, I thought it was fantastic. I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? Just realism during travel, keeping it consistent. Sometimes I've seen authors just do a certain trope like that for travel in a certain part of the book, but then as the book progresses, they just want to keep getting more into the story, into the fight scenes and things, until that travel aspect kind of just fizzles away, right? Keeping it consistent, I think, is a great thing in novels. And Sean, I love that aspect about healing. I mean, a realistic healing scenario for a novel, I think, would be awesome, because we love the tropes, and I mean, as much as we rag against them, like we love them and we're going to read them and keep reading them, but seeing something new and realistic in a certain aspect of it, especially healing, because you don't really see a lot of books about that. That's going to be awesome.
Healing is a huge one for me, and mine is she takes healing knowledge from our world to that world, and that's a huge thing, because her understanding of healing is a lot better. So she can deal with things like viruses that they would have just like, they're like, what? There's what is this?
Guess we'll die. Like
there's something inside of me that's like acting as a beacon. What?
Or like the biggest one that I've seen is blood loss. Like people are fighting these crazy epic scenes, and like they're like have like holes punched through their torso, and like half an arm is blown off, and like, dude, these people would be absolutely dead from blood loss if this one had any sense of realism whatsoever, right? But it's just we love the tropes, and they're never going to go away. But.
Exactly.
So, one of the questions I wanted to ask on this is like, so to go closer to the realism side, and I think that this is unique to every single writer, in that your own life experiences, your own expertise, all of these things that are unique to you, you're able to translate very well into your stories. If you were to pick a particular strength where you add realism, where is that and what is that? Like for me personally, I've been a recruiter for the last 12 years. So when it's negotiating scenes or it's things like that, I love that. And like, and you'll see in Quest Academy, there's a lot of the auction stuff and things like that. That's one of my truths, I suppose. What is it for you in your stories?
Start at the other end this time.
Sean, if you want to go first.
I mean, for me, it's medicine. I was a historian, then I went to medicine. And now I'm writing too, and it's but I love thinking about, and that doesn't mean I don't use magic to make healing go faster, because the pacing of the book gets really hard. I went out, I killed a level 2 rat, and then I got rabies. Now I'm going to be healing for 6 months. It's like, this is a really slow paced story. I mean, or there's going to be lots of, and 6 months later we tried again. But it's what I love to see is a little more of that I don't know, kind of realism brought to okay, what does an artery do when you pop it? What does bruises actually? How do bruises actually progress? Right? Exactly. That's a good one.
From needle people.
Yep, they do that. I mean, and so to me, it's just fun to see the realistic version of healing, and even if you're speeding it up with magic, it's kind of fun to see like, oh, well, you used a level 1 healing spell, and so you're still going to be deeply discolored and bruised. you know,
That's nice. Yeah, cool.
You know, this person can cast greater healing, and so now you no longer even have a hematoma. Yay! you know, and so I love seeing that kind of medical stuff, or like what is actually going on in your intestines, or what is actually going on, in a if you have a chapter 37 situation, like what medically is happening is kind of fascinating to me, and it's kind of fun to put some of the realism into those things, and I think it's cool.
What about you, Mike?
Yeah, for me, like I said, the traveling aspect of it, like there's two scenarios, right? One is like a short scene where they're traveling within a forest, and you have a little more leeway to skip in between kind of a mile or two, or a day, 2-3 days. But when you're traveling like across multiple nations or something like that in a caravan, let's say, keeping the realism there, like, oh well, did we get attacked by mercenaries along the way? Did we, oh no, there's some sacred beasts like in my novel that are attacking us? What happens? We got hurt, we have to heal for this next leg of the journey, or we're entering a very steep, rocky terrain. We have to unload carriages and do things like that. And then also another part is mercantile. I think a lot of authors really gloss over like the economy and mercantile aspects of their novels, and I want to bring some realism into that. Right, I've been in event management my entire career, so I've done huge events, small events, met tons of people, been all over the place, and I want to create a new kind of trope of how people do auctions in these fantasy worlds, and how they do business, and how magic plays a part. How they have skill, they can see how much you're sweating, if they can hear your heartbeat, if you're lying, you're trying to cheat them. There's different things that magic would absolutely be utilized in these aspects, to if we had it within our own lives, to get ahead in business, because I think in life money speaks for for a lot of things, and so it would obviously in these novels, and like in mine, and so that I'm going to try to bring some realism into that. I think that would be great, and something that I just really don't see a lot. One of the times I do see it kind of a bit is in Michael Chetfield's The 10 Realms. They do kind of a pretty good estimation on how to auctions and do some negotiations, and they start their own like mercantile companies as well. So that's pretty cool. But most of the other tropes that I've seen, like somehow like the the main character just runs into like 10,000 gold coins out of nowhere, where they find like a core of a monster core, and it's worth 100,000 gold coins, and now they're rich, and now they can buy all these powerful.
Every single herb is how expensive it is.
Yeah,
that's a one that's the Chinese trope that I hate. It's like,
yeah, like
I know every single thing about these really expensive, rare, hasn't been seen in 10,000 years herbs, and I know exactly how to use it.
Or like these characters that like get thrust into these system apocalypse, or these fantasy worlds, but they were never a merchant in their past life. They were a college student, and suddenly they're making like million gold coin transactions with these companies who have like lifelong merchant people. It's just like the realism is kind of like, you're just like, really? I think they would have gotten reamed or cheated out of that stuff very quickly. So
no one found that 10,000-year-old ginseng, but I tripped over it.
But I just slipped on it.
Yeah.
And then I realized this is 10,000-year-old ginseng, not
I
like
can tell
a desiccated
perfectly
just by looking at it, guys.
Or I just killed this 10 rats as my first quest, and some old man, because I was nice to him, gave me this 10,000-year-old ginseng. Like, come on, that would absolutely never happen. So
you are the person that needs this special class that no one else has ever been able
exactly
to get, because you kill those rats like everyone else.
Yep.
Craig, what about yourself?
So I think one of my big plot points in my second novel was actually touching on a lot of that infrastructure and, kind of behind the scenes transportation. One of the big plot points is a group of gnomes is trying to build a transcontinental railroad
Mhm.
for mass transport of like goods, because it's not cost effective to teleport everything when it's, you know, rocks and other raw materials. So they're, you know, transporting things by train, loading them onto interstellar, you know, bulk freighters for, you know,
That's why you need an
slow moving
inventory.
kind of transportation. But
Mhm.
that's kind of the plot point, is my main characters gets hired on as a, you know, a troubleshooter to escort this effort to rebuild this railroad. So I think it's, you know, trying to put some of that realism into the story, because he's you know, it's touching on the transportation networks and how things are actually moving behind the scenes. Even though most of the people in the stories just buy things at the shop, you know, somebody has to get those raw materials and make those items before they go into the shop.
Mhm.
Jay?
I've been trying to come up with a good answer for this. And I actually think I'm gonna choose a cast of characters is one of my specialties. As so I've played it both ways. Um, but you think about your cast of characters. A lot of people will try and limit it so that it's less confusing. Because let's be fair, it's a lot less confusing if you have a very small cast of characters.
Just make sure your main character has a name that starts with a J when you're writing lit RPG.
Jay.
Jay, hi.
The
I
best
am
one.
the beginning and the end. Yes. But like, here's the thing. It's not realistic to have a very small cast of characters in a huge city. Like, if
Mhm.
you're facing an apocalypse and you have a tiny community, that's a different story. But like, especially with academies, you think about how many I do academy in A Touch of Power, and people have complained to me about cast of characters because I have hundreds of characters in my books that last like 2 weeks. Like it's a 2 week time frame, and I've introduced hundreds and hundreds of people. But this is the thing: I used to work at a college, and I would go to these classes every day. And you have your main cast of characters. You have the friends that you're going to be sitting with in every class, and you have the people that you're going to hang out with primarily. But there are so many peripheral people who come in and just like do a couple things, and then they're out of your life. And I like to keep that realism in there because that to me denotes real life. There is, I have my core cast of people, but then I have, 70 to 100 acquaintances who I talk to on a semi frequent basis now. And, they keep coming up. They'll pop back up infrequently. Like I was at a convention, one of my local conventions, and I had a guy come buy a book. He's like, "Oh, I really like your book." And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You look really familiar." And I was like, "Yeah, you kind of do." And I was like, "We went to high school together. You know about those dark days. Cool."
Well, I have to say, like, I resonate very much with that on the academy front for reasons. But it's like the big large cast of characters, I think, is integral. And like, just like one of the things though is that when you do that, for me, I slow down the pace to almost a snail's crawl because it's just like to do them justice and to like keep it. It's like.
But here's the thing, you don't have to have every single character fleshed out, because in your life, how many people do you come across that you're like, "Oh, hey, that's a cool person. We had a 5-minute conversation. Bye, I'll never see you again."
Yeah.
All the time. But like it's all the time. But the thing is I love it. So that's one of the key reasons. Like I just do that. But
that's why I don't do academies.
It's like everyone's like, why did only 1 month pass in book one? I'm like, yeah, it's the semester one trilogy. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
I'm 4 books in and I've passed 2.5 weeks, maybe.
Oh, like it's the funniest thing. Like, because yeah, it was only when someone pointed out, it was like, Brian, you're at like 120,000 words and 8 days have passed. I'm like, no. And then I looked at it, I was like,
in 2 books on my other one.
It's the best and worst thing because it means like we have a runway. for the rest of the saga, and they're like trilogy. I'm like saga.
Yeah, exactly. Everyone always says trilogy, but it always keeps going. Yep.
Yeah.
It gets worse when you're playing in somebody else's world and you have to
Oh,
make the
man.
timeline line up
Match
with things
there.
in the main series.
Oh gosh.
Oh, that does sound like absolute
Yeah,
hell.
that's why I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like Brian, like I love your main character. Like he's the son of an auction house, family. Like, and that way he can like navigate, when he's selling his own items and things and making like contract deals and negotiations. But like that's the kind of realism I'm talking about, right? Like he has the prior knowledge, so he can like talk to that. He doesn't have to like just suddenly, he's like a master, merchant or something like that. That's awesome, man.
Yeah,
I do like
clueless
one
about
of my
everything
favorite
else.
tropes is reversion, just because that means they've already lived through it once and gotten the knowledge, and therefore they have a reason to know stuff. That is one of my favorite tropes, is the reversion, just for that reason.
But I think
It's
also
a lot
like
of fun, but it's hard to do right, and I don't think I could do that. But like Towers of Heaven and a couple others are really good for that.
It
Second
helps
Chance
if you give them a perfect photographic memory.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah.
I mean, but that's also what the training montage is for, right?
Right.
And that's probably one of my favorite tropes too. It's like, yeah. Oh, I know kung fu.
I can now kick a dragon to death. It's like, no,
well, even
you can't.
going into that though, with characters with perfect memory, like you've got a character that is in a lot of ways smarter than your author, and so you have to make that real too, and that has to feel real to the reader, even if it's not necessarily the case in real life.
I had fans today who were like, "Oh, so why didn't she talk about this ability?" And I was like, "Because I forgot about it. I forgot I gave it to her."
But there's readers that just love that OP main character that like is always just sticking it to everybody in every single thing, and just is always like the main dude and everything, and people love that stuff. I mean, I do. I mean, there's a book called System Universe. Who like the main character is just so OP, he's just amazing at everything, and I mean it's a great series so far. So you can't. There's sometimes it works and just sometimes it doesn't. But when
I
it
will
does
say
work,
that is another part of realism, is forgetting things that you have, because when your skill list grows, you forget about stuff. You're like, oh, wait, I have something that might work here. Maybe let me go look.
That skill's not in my hotbar,
Well, I mean, that even ties into the inventory, right?
Let me Google.
Oh yeah. I forgot I have this 10,000-year-old ginseng here in my inventory, and it's been there for 3 books, but I haven't used it or sold it yet.
Oh,
well, that's because I have 800 other things in my inventory.
I have this in my inventory, and she's thinking, I don't have any of this, but it got put in one inventory. She's got 7 different inventories, and some of them are inside of each other. I didn't check through all of them. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I guess then the following question from that is, like, with talking about the realism aspect, have you found that it becomes a limiting factor that and I imagine this potentially with post-apocalyptic, because if you have societal things, or if you have maybe established certain things, there's like, oh, well, this is how realistic this would be. That expectation is then placed on everything else you do. Because if you show that, like, oh, well, this is how it actually works, then they're like, oh, that logic will be applied everywhere.
To everything.
And
don't give set numbers, Brian. Don't give dimensions.
Oh God! Sorry, dimensions.
Oh man, they'll pick you apart. People will pick you apart for that.
Oh, I just know I'm screwed.
I have a 14-step calculator for my attacks in my VR world, and I do not give that to anyone because I don't want them to be able to reverse engineer it.
Oh,
I feel that very hard because my main character uses guns, so I get the gun realism. But I can play with that a little bit because I've got the system, and I'm at the point now where my character has a skill that pulls ammunition directly from his inventory, so he doesn't even have to reload his guns anymore. So
that would be great.
Like to a certain point, like you have to have like that has to be earned. I've got to say, he's got the skill for this, then this is how it works. He's still got to have that ammo sitting in his inventory if he wants that to work.
Yeah, and I think we also have to.
What people like, right? That's part of what makes it fun and real, is that it's like, yeah, he's actually shooting a real bullet. It's not just magic gun. And so I mean, but that's what makes people who love guns have fun with your book.
I think conservation of magic and energy is an important one, though. Not just hand waving, oh, I get magic all the time, but like having like, otherwise, if I could just like magic bullet to death everything without consequences, like part of magic conservation of energy, realism and conservation of energy is that the energy for magic at least still has to come from somewhere. And it has to have consequences so that you can't just be a Gatling magic gun.
But I also think how certain realism will apply to multiple things. I think we also have to understand that we are in a fantasy world, right, where magic or whatever it is exists. So we have a little bit of leeway where we can be like, well, magic, because of magic, it might apply in this situation, but because of magic, it might not apply in this other one. But like Craig said, sometimes it has to either be earned, it has to be able to be explained by whatever parameter that you have set for your world rules, or whatever else that you're envisioning it. But you do have a little bit of leeway. I think it doesn't always have to be because this is one way. This other part of the story has to be realistic in that sense as well. So I think there's always that as well.
Another thing is accountability and forgetfulness. In the heat of battle, it's a case of like, I have my character being like, oh shit, I could have done that. Like literally being like, oh fuck. And then it's like, it's believable because in the heat of battle, he's like, kill.
You don't remember.
And then it's like why didn't you do that? And we're like, oh, that's a great idea.
That would have been smart.
Yeah.
And especially for characters who have never had battle in their entire life before they came into the system or universe,
or they've
right?
Never been hit.
They're like I say, the trope of like they were a college student and they suddenly in this fantasy world and they're battling every day and suddenly they're just master, fighters. Most people have never been hit in their lives, and the first time they get punched in the face, everything goes out the window. And why would the character be any different?
I think everybody should have to take a boxing class and learn to get punched in the nose and learn that you can keep going.
You didn't just fight in high school? What? I mean,
that refutes James' previous one of like a picture being the queen of high school, unless you were like a delinquent queen that was fighting everyone and had tournaments, because I'd read that story. James had another question. It's like, have you ever given your characters an ability or power to get out of a situation, then regretted that power they had later?
Oh, I've got that one. So my main character was originally written for a short story anthology. So I gave him a power where he could, essentially scent, kind of track things by scent. Except when I was actually then building out the full character, skill tree, the skill didn't really fit in it. So I had to find a way to give this character the skill outside of his class skill tree. So that it fit the story, but
special ability.
So it still worked inside the universe that it was. He purchased it from the shop at some point, but nobody's called me out on it. But I'm confessing my sins now. So
of the special skill tree called Deus Ex Machina. What does this do? And it's like,
but it was tough because I wrote the short first, which is set over about a year into the apocalypse, and then I went back and wrote the my first novel, which is A Fistful of Credits, which is the origin story of how this character survives the apocalypse. So working in reverse and bringing a character from a short story into a novel that's actually set before the short story, and then bringing them up to the point of the novel was challenging.
Yeah, I mean, since I haven't published my novel yet, it's kind of we'll see what happens. Maybe later on, and as the story progresses, I'll look back and I'll just be like, damn, that skill was too OP. Like I should have nerfed it or not even give it to them. But I'm sure there'll be something, and I'll have to kind of balance it out with something bad happening to them later on. The skill is useless for. So
Does anyone else do this out of like fear of not being able to go back and edit the first books, where you literally throw in all of these breadcrumbs, being like, you know, I might use that later, might use that later, might use that later, and people are like, oh, I think this is going to happen with that, and you're like, book 5 maybe, like, and they're like, wow.
I remember,
dude. I use a lot of fan suggestions because. Like I would world build on my Discord server, and I really enjoyed doing that. And I had fans come up with things, and I'm like, people are like, "This was a great idea." It's like, it wasn't mine. Cool. Thank you for that fan. I don't remember who suggested it, but you did a great.
I executed his vision or their vision perfectly. Yeah. Just like pat yourself in the back.
Well, and I actually really think this is funny because, okay, so with my VR game, I actually literally roll for drops and loot, which could be really fun and really terrible at the same time, because she's gotten things that she got one skill that I called it tidy, and it was supposed to be like a cleaning spell, but it has become the most overpowered thing ever.
Yeah.
I love it, but like, so there was, and when I was writing book 2, my editor was going through, and in one scene she uses this perfect confluence of skills to get into this area that she should not have been able to get into at her level, and I'm like, I did not plan for that. Like, I was not thinking that she was going to be able to get into this area, but then she had gotten this perfect looting of skills to make this possible. And I was like, oh, hey, that's really cool. I did not plan that.
Okay, that's an interesting topic then. What about scope creep? Have you started off with something that then fucking spiraled out of your control? Jay, we're going to come back to you in a minute, but Craig laughed first. So Craig, what happened?
I don't really have a good one for this, but a lot of it is just I create weapons and things like that my character then has to use and keep track of. Like, he has a skill that's like a special inventory just for all his weapons and stuff. So, like, keeping track of and using some of this stuff, you know, constantly is always fun, because then you have to put them in a situation where they need to use these things that, oh, I mentioned he picked this thing up, you know, a couple chapters ago. Yeah. So now he's got it. He's got to use it, right? So then you have to come up with an opponent that's going to be a challenge for him, where he has to start busting this stuff out. And so it kind of puts you in, you know, constantly creating new enemies and new challenges for your main character, which, you know, that's what people want to see.
Yeah.
So I guess the question would be slightly different for Mike and Sean, but like, has there been a plot point within your current works that you became attached to it, or you're like, okay, this is now integral to the storyline, that maybe started off small but then grew out of proportion?
I'll let Sean go first.
Okay.
Hey, Sharon.
A little bit. It's one of those like, oh, I guess I can fundamentally change the system because I really like the way that, like, I changed I went back, scrapped everything from page 1 because I liked the way that the system borked her stats better the way I wrote it towards the
before
end.
Time, yeah.
You know, and so I was like, well, let's go back and rewrite all that. But it's been fun. I mean, it's kind of one of those, like, my system's not in stone yet, so haha, I can fix it.
Just wait till you hit that publish button.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Then you're stuck.
Instant regret.
Oh man, I think about that every day since I'm getting so close to publishing time. I'm just like, oh man, should I have done this or should I have done that? But you know, I'm sure it'll be. Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many ways that I always think I'm like, I could have taken the story this way, but I'm happy with the way it is now. But there's always, you know, that little author in the back of that little squirrel in the back of your mind that's like, maybe we should have done it this other way, you know. But we'll see. But at least for me, you know, a part of my novel was, again, the realism of a character, you know, having like humor, and then meeting like their mentor, who's teaching him about this new world that they woke up in, and kind of instilling some of their nuances and humor into him, because he has no idea sometimes what they're saying, and he thinks they're just being weird. But then slowly he's picking up on their nuances and the humor, and kind of starts even saying things himself. So kind of merging the two the two other main characters and their mentor together, kind of the conjoining of two different ages, I think is kind of one of my favorite parts so far.
Brilliant. And Jay?
I am the perfect example of both what to and not to do in this aspect, because to be fair, both of my series are the inspiration for both of my series. One was an ability and one was an item. And I built both of the series became based on ideas for this ability and for this item, and they are both infinite growth. So the
Sky's
ability, yeah, the siphon ability is literally infinite growth. Like, she can siphon from people basically indefinitely, and become a god. And the item for Mystic Mage is an item that can eat things basically indefinitely, and so eat other items to become stronger. So they're both very much infinite growth items, or infinite growth abilities. And so part of how I'm managing that is that I have an end goal in mind. Like, I knew the end from the beginning. I knew what the upper limit was, and I have planned for that. And yes, they are very overpowered abilities. They are. But because I knew the end from the beginning, I have been able to plan appropriately for enemies and things like that, knowing that even though she is overpowered, there are still other things that are equally insane. And so I have been able to do, like, yes, there will be things that are easy for her to do, and she can do stuff that other people couldn't. But and part of that is you just have to figure out, like, different things sometimes that are the challenge. Maybe the challenge is social, maybe the challenge is money. There are all of these things, or a bunch of enemies. You have to be able to do all of that. Like, I might not be killed by this dragon, but if I have a billion ants who are eating me alive. I also have I have a thing where I don't believe in like, health bars are different. Like, I believe in critical hits. Like, if you get hit in the head, you're gonna die if your head gets taken off. Okay.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest pet peeves, when people like can survive a headshot, or their heart being blown out of their chest, or something like that. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, just walk it off.
Yeah, it's like a health potion,
Superior health potion.
Superior.
So just on that, I suppose, like, because I'm very curious about this now, because again, within the realm of realism and convenience, when you have certain things that are like, that explosive growth, things that happen within progression fantasy, or you have, in your instance, an ever-evolving, item set or ability. What sort of limiting factors have you put on those things to create a sense of challenge and actual progression in likes of prerequisites that need to be met, or certain things? How have you kind of taken that challenge in your own works to kind of create that challenge system? And start with Sean.
Yeah. So what I'm doing with that one is I'm essentially just pumping the brakes on all the stats. So the stat numbers stay low, because the essence of her mechanic is she can only put points in luck, and so has to find ways to make luck turn into strength, or constitution, or dexterity, or whatever. And so the problem is as that escalates, if you get all of your points in one stat, all of a sudden you have 30, 40, 50, 60, and the average is 25. You get increasingly broken. And so, in effort to keep her not too broken until the series ends. You're starting with 4 stat points, and then moving on from there. And so it's just trying to keep the world small, kind of like you were talking about. It's, she starts in a hamlet and it's a small world and it's a small stat point and it's kind of a small story. And that was the point in me writing it, is I wanted to be just like a fun, cute, sweet story that's a simple read. And so trying to limit and now I explode the world.
Well, I mean, 4 plus 4 is that 4 makes a huge difference if that's all that you have. But if you have 10,000 points and you get 4, it doesn't make a big difference.
Exactly.
And it's also what point in the story do they get those points, right? Do they get it right off the bat? Do they get 10,000 points right off the bat? Or do they get 10,000 points, while they're, kind of already OP, or, mid-tier?
Or do they find the 10,000-year-old ginseng, which gives them 800 points?
That is what I'm talking about. I mean, when it comes to my story, like that's exactly it, right? When it comes to cultivation, the way you cultivate is you find, natural treasures that are really, key infused and intensive and powerful. You absorb those and you process that key and you add that to your cultivation base, and you rank up in tiers and in stages. And so, the realism is like, again, you're not just going to be wandering the forest and you're going to come across these things like every day, but at the same time, the characters, since they kind of jump into this new era in my novel, they wake up in it, they kind of have to catch up a little bit, or else, they're just going to be blown apart when they start meeting other cultivators. So what I do is I try to give them a little bit of a push, with giving them some really important, foundational things for the cultivation, so they can grow and kind of get to a little higher tier in their cultivation, so they can compete. But after that, like once novel book 1 is over, they're going to start hitting this wall where, they're going to have to start working for what they attain, right? They're going to have to become merchants. They're going to have to, make deals and get these really hard to earn, natural treasures, to be able to absorb them, or to be able to sell them to buy something that they actually need. I think for me, in my novel, at least in my universe, that's the whole point, right? To be able to do that in a realistic way, but at the same time, have the story progress at a good pace, and not just be like, oh man, these guys have been stuck at this level for, who knows how long, for three novels. Are they ever going to get stronger? Of course they're going to get stronger, but that comes into circumstances, kind of what risks they want to take and what not. I think in a lot of novels we see that characters they take every risk that comes their way, no matter what it is. You see this 10,000-year-old dragon, and you're like, I'm gonna slay it. I'm level 5, and somehow I make it trip and fall and break its neck, and somehow I can harvest its heart and craft all these weapons. It's like, I don't think so. My characters are gonna see some certain situations. They're gonna be like, oh hell no, and they're gonna just like walk away, or they're gonna see somebody in trouble and they're gonna be like, oh, it's a princess in trouble. Nope. We're gonna go away.
I've seen that movie.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't think so. It's surrounded by like a mercenary band of 10,000 mercenaries protecting this princess. I don't think so. That's not gonna happen. So just again, keeping that realism, kind of maybe moving into that trope, I think is kind of what my novel's more about. So.
But please, Mike, I really need him to have some form of rival or some other guy that finds the ginseng, and he's like, fuck that guy. As in, like, literally everything.
Oh man, my characters have very, brutish attitudes. They're just gonna be like, what the hell? Like, how did this happen? How did he get that? Or oh yeah, they're gonna see something up on like a Mount Everest, and you're gonna be like, oh hell no, I can't climb that mountain. What? Why? How am I gonna do that? So, absolutely, you'll see that in the novel.
Craig, what about yourself?
What was the question again?
Oh, sorry. Limiting factors, prerequisites to avoid power creep.
So my character has like an advanced class, but he's still limited by how much experience he can earn. So like things are going to start not providing as much experience the higher level you get. So you've got to kill more things. You've got to kill harder things. Like you can't just, grind those level 2 rats until you are OP.
Diminishing returns.
Yeah,
diminishing.
It's
it's funny.
It's also, it's not just like the character experience gain. Like they need new equipment. That's one of the things in the system is that you always have like you're earning credits, sure, but like you're spending them on new armor, new equipment, bullets, ammunition, explosives, to survive and have the tools you need to defeat harder and harder enemies. You gotta spend money to make money, right?
I love those novels where they have to get 2 million experience points to get to the next level, and like in 2 chapters they do it. It's just like, what?
Yeah, I can't believe we spent all that time with wolves, killing them, and it's just like, what? It was just like, 3 months we spent there killing
3
wolves.
months killing wolves. Lots of wolves. There were infinite wolves.
Yeah, they kept respawning. We were waiting for them to give birth, and then just be like, what?
Loving baby wolf puppies.
By the way, do you need pelts?
Can't give much experience.
We 50,000 pelts. Do you
50,000?
My skinning is god tier.
And how are you transporting 50,000 pelts? Like, can your storage ring hold 50,000 pelts?
Infinite inventory, okay?
No,
infinite inventory.
We found this one merchant with 20,000 carts. Like, obviously, it's sorry, Jay.
So I built this in pretty early. So with the touch of power, she literally has to touch skin to skin the people that she's siphoning. So that's limited on. She's trying to keep it a secret, but still like surreptitiously touch everyone. And she can only do it every so often. So you can't just do the same people over and over and over and over again. So hers is like, that's a very like, yes, she can, as long as she keeps touching people. And that's also part of I need to have a wide variety of characters, and it can't just be the same people over and over, because she's got to like go and like, let me just go and touch everyone. Then hi. Yes.
Cooldowns are awesome. I love cooldowns for skins.
Let me touch you. Let me touch your skin on like you're fully clothed.
Just caressing their face, being like, love your work.
It puts the lotion on its skin. It puts the lotion on its skin.
You go to the bathroom stalls, just reach your hand underneath everybody.
Without telling people, I'm like, let me do this while you're asleep so that you don't notice the drain.
That makes it less creepy. Please tell me.
Absolutely. But like,
please tell me she's a germaphobe as well.
She's trying to not tell people, but still trying to do this. And she's also limited by the amount of energy that she can do it with. Because, again, that conservation of energy. If I'm trying to siphon a whole bunch of people at the same time and I don't have the energy to support the changes that my body is making, that's a problem. And she almost dies because of it. And then with the other one, with the item that I have, she can only sacrifice each, like, so if there's this and the exact same item, she can only sacrifice it once. There's only one thing that's guaranteed to come off of it, which is flat damage, which gets progressively less. Like, flat damage is less important the higher your HP goes. So that's one of the limitations on it. And then there's a percentage of taking something else, but like she sacrifices a whole bunch of stuff and gets nothing from it. So like, and that's also like a money sink. Like I just sacrificed a whole bunch of items that did nothing. Cool. That's wasted money.
Sell them.
All the merchants being like, sorry, I just bought 20,000 pelts. I can't afford this. So we have 3 starred questions that you'll be able to see there. 2 of them from Facebook user and 1 from Ryan Maxwell. Rather than going around the room, because we've only like 7 minutes left, is there any of them that resonate with you? Anyone that wants to pick one and answer it? Sean, which one?
I like the mental health one.
I mean, 2 of them are on that.
Yeah. The mental health one? Which one is that one? Oh, there it is.
So how do you tackle the mental health
and how do you do it when they're like having to kill monsters and bandits without having done that before?
Sean, what is your answer for mental health?
I mean, and this is one of those. I actually do a lot of work with mental health. I mean, I treat a lot of people with PTSD and neurological traumas and all this kind of stuff. And so that's one of the areas where I'm striving to actually just keep it real. Where, killing people is traumatizing, like almost getting your face eaten by a wolf is gonna give you nightmares. It's not just, and now I'm gonna go kill 49,000 more wolves.
And skin them,
take their pelts and cover in gore, and just
this is how I deal with trauma.
I smashed the baby wolves. Yeah, it's like that's kind of horrifying. And so for me, like, that's actually something I like keeping real, at least for this world. But then there's other worlds where it's like, well, that's just the way the world works, because different world, it's pretty bad.
Well,
yeah, for me,
it's sent into madness too, and that's why we have beginner villages. That's why we start with little things. Like with Jade, she doesn't want to be a hero when she starts, but by book 4, she's like slaughtering people like slaughtering monsters left and right. But when she first comes, she's like, how much is this world, and she has to come to grips with this, like, how much is this world going to change me? And it's little things by little, like her line gets further, and like, where do I draw the line? And it's a line in the sand, and the sand is shifting.
Yeah, for me, I think I love, again, Michael Chatfield's 10 Realms is a great example of this, but when people are up against the wall and it's a fight for their lives, and they're having compassion for their enemies, drives me nuts. When they're like they're monologuing as they have their enemy like on their knees, it's like, dude, just finish him off. When it comes to mental health, that's why you also give characters backstories, right? If somebody's been a hunter his whole life, he's been killing animals, killing monsters is not going to be such a big hassle for his mental health, right? It's going to be different when the monster's mauling on his leg, and of course he's going to have some trauma with that, but he's going to be able to better handle it.
If the bunny stabs me, I'm going to kill it.
Yeah, but again, that comes to that realism. Like if you have a good backstory for your character, and he has the chops and the knowledge on how to handle different things, the mental health aspect doesn't really come into play as much. But then you see characters where they're just like, they're being so, not, I hate to say it, but nice to their enemies, or they're being very compassionate. I'm like, when you're fighting for your life in a post-apocalyptic world, fantasy world, where there's monsters, your life is on the line every day, it's like you don't have that luxury. You would be killed instantly if you had all this compassion for these monsters or these bandits, whatever it is, right? You have to handle business and maybe later take care of it, especially when you kill a human. That's going to be, like Sean said, traumatic. But you have to get over it if you want to keep surviving. If not, you're going to be at the mercy of everybody. So that's going to be a component, at least in my knowledge.
One of the easy ways to take care of that is with like virtual realities and stuff. Is they can die and they have multiple lives, they can have that trauma. And again, that mental trauma of like, hey, I just died is going to mess you up. But like,
thanks, Michael.
So with that one, you can also take a note out of like Joss Whedon's book and kill the lowest lovable character just to teach him, even though the main character can't die.
Still too soon.
I want to give you time for shout outs. So let's start with Jay going around. Tell us, what are you currently working on? What would you like to tell people?
So I'm currently actually doing edits of my book 1 through 3 of Touch of Power, so I can do an Omni edition. I'm gonna put that out because it's been bothering me, and it's prep work for book 5, which I'm like trying to find all of my loose ends and make notes of them so that I can. I'm like, oh wait, I need to address this in book 5. So I've been editing book 1 through 3, and I'm gonna put out an Omni of that as I'm writing book 5. And I just came out with book 2 of my Mystic Mage series. So, hey, thanks, Michael.
Brilliant. And Craig, don't worry, we can run over by a few minutes, so you don't need to rush.
All right. My third book in my co-written series with Tao Wong, Apocalypse Grit, the third book in the System Apocalypse Relentless series, just released at the beginning of this month, so you can check that out. I'm sort of ideating for book 4 and bouncing between a couple projects in the meantime.
Amazing. And Mike?
Awesome. Yeah, like I said, I'm about to release my first novel, Awoken, on November 2nd. The audiobook just got finished as well, so that'll be coming out at the same time. And I'm currently working on book 2 of the series, and should have that out next year as well, and just keep churning these books out.
Is it up for pre-order?
It is up for pre-order. Woken is up for pre-order. You can find that on Amazon. I'm sure Geneva will post the links down below.
Right there.
And for those of you audiophiles, audio feeds or whatever you guys call yourselves, you guys can find that on Audible as well. So yeah, enjoy
Is it going to be a simultaneous release?
It is, yes.
Good job.
Well, I hope so. It ran out in
Audible is weird. Okay, we get it.
How can you not set the date for release? It's crazy. Yeah, but
it will let it out of jail at some point.
I think the audiobook will be out a few days before the ebook. But we will see. So
because you can't guarantee anything.
You can't guarantee it. Yeah, it's just the way it freaking sucks.
Let's see. When does it
come?
And Sean, what is your ETA on Lucky?
Goal is to have it published before next Dragon Con. So.
All right. you need some ARC readers? I would love to read it.
I'm actually thinking the exact same with you, but I'll just wait for release, Mike. I'm really excited to read. I'm like, merchant story? Let's fucking go.
Yeah.
As long as you don't just coincidentally have a auction every time you go to a new city to get you exactly what you need. That bothers me so much.
No, because auctions are for very important items, right? So like unless a very specific important item comes up that everybody's salivating over, we're not going to see auctions, but you'll see a lot of transactions between merchants and the main characters. So.
Yeah, it's like, why are all the auctions for hidden slave masters? Like, what is this? As in, like, oh god,
every single time.
It's like, oh, this person is. I can only see their potential. Oh, just like I want an amulet. Fuck off.
Only I can tell that that's a dragon egg. Okay, nobody else can figure out that that's a dragon egg.
Identification of items drives me nuts too. Oh man, yeah, absolutely.
But unfortunately, that is all we have time for.
Oh, yes.
The Argento auction. But look, sorry, are there any links for you, Sean, that we could for your socials? And
no,
stuff?
not at the moment. Just
okay.
look out for my name on the Amazon.
Here today.
We will indeed. No, sorry, like Queen's Wave. Oh, she's dead. King's Wave. Ew.
Are we supposed to keep waiting?